Welcome everybody to the bronze match here at the Age of Empires 4 monthly tournament number 3 for meta plays in the north. In the color purple, we have Chrysaor playing the English.
And in our south, playing as the Chinese, it is Core playing as the color pink. Pink and purple, rather difficult to distinguish between the two.
Wait, I think I might be in a different match than you.
It's HRE in China, right?
No, it's English and Rus. I think I am in a different map.
Okay.
Hang on, I apologize.
That's okay.
I thought this was the first game played.
No, the first one I have is China and HRE.
Okay. I'm in the wrong one. I apologize, everybody. Let me get the correct one. So is it the one on Lipany?
This is Hillendale.
Oh, Hillendale. Okay. Oh, I see what happened. Okay.
You got it.
I thought the first game was this, or I thought the second game was the first game.
Oh, I see. Okay.
All right, where are you at? I'm loaded in.
I'm at 1 minute 3 seconds.
Okay. I will fast forward till I'm there. All right.
All right, on 3. Ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
3. Okay.
Do you want to try it again?
Let's try this again. Let's try this again, everybody. Okay. In the Northeast, still in the color purple, but actually on the Holy Roman Empire this time, we have Chrysaor.
That's why when you said purple, I just assumed what you were saying was correct. And then I was like, no, wait a minute. And then in the pink, playing as the Chinese spawning on the South Hill is Core. And I'll say it again. That pink to purple, somewhat difficult to distinguish sometimes.
It can be. It's not as hard, in my opinion, as orange and red, but it can be just a little bit difficult depending on your personal color sensitivity. It's a little bit different for everybody, but yeah, we'll have to see if that causes an issue for either of them in this game, if they'll be able to distinguish their own units from the enemies or not. But yeah, this is Hillendale, and this is kind of what I expected us to see in the last game when we were going to Hillendale for Beastie Cutie versus Salami. I expected us to see China versus someone really defensive like the HRE. So maybe we'll get the game I thought we were going to have last game for this game.
Yeah, and I think you're going to hit the nail on the head. However, with Chrysaor doing a little bit differently of a Dark Age build for the HRE, going with a barracks and sending some Dark Age spearmen out to the Chinese. Now, as somebody who's watched a decent amount of HRE, played against it a lot, I don't think I've ever seen this, actually.
It is not uncommon, and not to rag on Salami too much, because the biggest weakness of the Chinese is early aggression, right? So that's why he picks Mongols in the last game, is because he was really trying to go for a tower rush, do early aggression, and throw the Chinese player off balance. This is the exact same idea, but it's the Holy Roman Empire's way of doing it. They aren't as adept as tower rushing, they don't have the movement speed, all those sorts of things. So you build early spearmen out of a Dark Age barracks, and use that to put pressure onto the Chinese gold and wood, especially the gold, because there's no way for the town center to respond. And if you can force your enemy off of gold early on, you can keep them out of the Song dynasty. You'll probably be too late to keep them from getting up to feudal. That's probably a lost battle. But keeping them out of the Song dynasty is still a really big deal if you can keep them off of gold, and that's what this is really designed to do.
And a good job he is doing at that, creating that little bit of idle time The villagers have to get their shivs out. One of them had to vacate the premises just because it was as damaged as it was. And yeah, you're right in terms of song timing. It might delay him a little bit. China does get the taxes, however, going to have to rely on that if he wants to go up with the Barbican too.
So far, things going pretty well with this early aggression, getting some damage down, now starting to torch down this mining camp, and not at the required 200 gold to get up to Song. So he's 50 gold short, and that is exactly what they were going for. Now, unfortunately, the Chinese, being the Chinese, can make up some of that with tax gold, right? Mm-hmm. So this isn't a perfect kind of scenario where you can deny them from Song Dynasty forever, but you can throw them off balance, disrupt their build order timing enough so that this doesn't play out by the way they want you to. And then, you've got feudal age men-at-arms up in their face and, they just can't react fast enough. So this isn't going to win the game outright, but it's designed to slow them down, right?
Oh yeah, and that's exactly what they're doing too, because usually by the time that Imperial Academy gets done, they're already starting to build the Barbican. That's what a really good Song build does. Core has not chosen to do that. What he's actually chosen to do is take 5 Chinese villagers, leave the hill, go across the dale to the other hill, and he's probably looking for some kind of Barbican drop. But he doesn't have the gold. Maybe he's just looking for an outpost here. He's looking to cause some disruption for the HRE.
Yeah, this is some shenanery up in here, because this is not what we generally see from the Chinese. This has to be a tower drop of some kind. Like you said, not enough gold for the Barbican. So probably looking, he's, hey, if you want to deny me from gold, I can play that game too. And he's probably looking to tower the gold for his opponent here.
Yeah, he's got the 100 wood for the outpost, and there you go, right there, smack dab right next to the gold mine. And Chrysaor, just because he made those spearmen and that barracks, his Aachen Chapel is going to be rather delayed, but Chrysaor sees this and takes all of his villagers, puts torches in their hand, and starts to try to burn this outpost down.
I don't know exactly what the DPS of 4 villagers is. I don't think it's enough to keep this from going up, but if you pull 7 more, that'll definitely be enough to burn this thing down. Probably not even with a villager loss. There may be one once all these villagers garrison, but they're not going to garrison. They're going to repair, which means the outpost isn't doing any damage. They finally go in now. This is a disaster of a tower rush. It's forced some decent amount of idle time, which is a good news, I guess, as a consolation prize, but you wanted more than to force a little bit of idle time here. And sending 5 villagers all the way across the map is more idle time than you were causing by dropping this outpost in the first place. So a net loss, really, for Core here in trying to get this tower rush going.
And I think the issue was because those villagers weren't escorted, right? Because he had 3 archers to try to stop any kind of the aggression that Chrysaor was doing with the spearmen. But I wish they went with the villagers so they were able to create a little bit of a defensive zone for them. But now, after that outpost comes up, he's got a rather safer outpost, putting a Barbican right in front of that Aachen Chapel.
Now, this Barbican will deny the big gold and these berries, but I don't think it ranges that gold. I think these villagers are okay to continue taking it here. So this is a containment Barbican, not a push you off gold Barbican.
Yeah, and a super annoying one at that, because I know there's going to get to a point in the game where that first gold vein's going to run out and he's going to want to go somewhere else, but he might have to leave the hill in order to do that because of the Barbican, assuming he doesn't have that much of a military stranglehold. But looking at how this game has been playing out as the Barbican gets completed, I remember months ago with Chinese and HRE, and it just played so differently than this. This is a very different meta that we're seeing in November of 2022.
I honestly really like it. I love the way that the game has shifted and changed. I really like the state that it's in now. There was a period of time where all we ever did as a community was just build lots of TCs and then fight it out in Castle or Imp. And I really love the way that the game feels to play right now. It feels like strategies across all the ages are viable, and there's so many different ways you can approach things. It just feels great, diverse to play. Big shout out to the devs for just making such an incredible game state that makes it feel great to play.
Yeah, the diversity that we've seen, the metas that we've seen shift throughout the past year, to the point where China, yeah, Barbican rushes was something that they did, but things like putting outposts up here, things like adding a barracks up here as well. Trying to probably get some spearmen out of that barracks to combat the horsemen, because this used to be a rush up to Castle Age as fast as you can kind of thing, and the HRE does not have the opportunity to do this. They've been disrupted hardcore.
Yeah, and that you can tell right out of the gate that was the plan for Core. He was like, I do not want the HRE building feudal age men at arms and sending them to my base where I can't really deal with him. I especially don't want him getting up to Castle Age. So I'm going to put on a ton of aggression to keep his gold down to a minimum and keep his troops stuck in his base. And so far it's worked. Not a single man at arms out for the HRE yet. All horsemen, which are decent. They'll work in the feudal age, but you can tell that's not what the HRE player wants to be building.
No, and it doesn't seem like Chrysaor had the economy to consistently pump out men-at-arms as well. He's trying to make the least amount of units possible in order to get up to Castle Age, because you see his resources, he's going to be at about 1,000 food pretty soon, and he will have the gold for it. So, in terms of getting up for Castle Age timing, Core did delay this by, I want to say, like a solid 3 or 4 minutes.
But, and that 3 or 4 minutes, it is going to impact some things somewhat. But it also, at some point, was an inevitability that the HRE will make it up to Castle Age. It's kind of just too hard to deny them from all of their resources at once. But the big win here in the placement of this Barbican and these walls and all these things is that the HRE wants to get to Castle Age because there's twofold reasons. They'd like to get stronger men-at-arms, and they'd like to pick up relics. It is going to be so dang hard for Chrysaor to get any relics whatsoever. Core has walled in front of Chrysaor's walls, trying to keep him contained inside this base. So he's saying, you can get up to Castle Age, that's fine. I will just make sure that you get almost no value from getting there.
And that's exactly what's going to happen with these walls on the north side of the hill. The only ones that have not been finished yet, the south ones have been completed. So there's really only one good relic that Chrysaor could be able to get with any kind of ease. But there's 2 Chinese villagers coming up there. It looks like they're probably going to finish that wall. So they're probably going to pick up the relic, but can't put it anywhere.
This is the strangest foot race in the world. I'm watching this with bated breath, trying to figure out who's going to get there first, the wall or the prelate running home. He hasn't picked up the relic yet. I think if he had picked it up immediately and turned around, he actually might have made it back in time, but he's still just standing there looking at the relic. No! No, please! Pick it up! There we go. He got it.
And just hitting Castle Age, so he's able to pick that thing up. I guess in Feudal Age, they look at relics as some kind of mystical anomaly that they can't touch. So you gotta wait for Castle to pick him up. Villager's gonna go down, though, on the north side. So this wall is not gonna get finished. Chrysaor is gonna get at least 1 relic.
This Barbican continuing to be annoying, shooting at anything but villagers, and that means that this food, these berries, this gold, going to be denied for the long term. But you have to imagine, with this Barbican being, essentially a glorified outpost, it wouldn't be too hard for the HRE player to build up a series of men-at-arms and burn this thing to the ground once he really needs those resources. So this contain feels like it has a clock on it, right? At some point, Chrysaor will break out of here if there's not some sort of killing blow dealt by Core.
Yeah, I agree. As far as it goes for the HRE, I feel like you can only contain them to some point. And if you're not doing damage to their economy, as Chrysaor has made a change, he has some mills in the back with a prelate, inspiring a lot of these villagers here. So it's kind of like an Aachen chapel of sorts, but it's but he needs a prelate in order to do so. The difference is behind this, because we're going to talk about Chinese being overpowered again. They've been on 2 TC Song while this is going on. Their eco is 65 to 38. It's insane.
Oh my goodness, I didn't even realize. I hadn't even looked up at the villager count at the top of the screen. That is so true. Doubling up on villagers thanks to that Song TC, double TC Song Dynasty build. And that is going to make a world of difference. It means that the single TC HRE player cannot even begin to keep up economically. So the economic count is struggling a little bit for Core, but he has all the villagers in the world to make up for that. Can drop production and just print an army whenever he feels like he needs one. So there's this really interesting push and pull we've got going on here between containment and map control and, you know, early control and villagers. And I love the way that this feels to play out. It feels so distinct and different from, you know, for the last game that we saw, for instance. I'm really enjoying the way that this is playing out here.
Oh yeah, even though it's the same map and one of the civs is the same, how different this is, because this this HRE economy is doing the best it can to kind of stabilize. Has some knights, some Castle Age knights and some horsemen trying to take down a tower in this little proxy base that is going on for core. That's still trying to make Spearman out of, but I don't think it's going to be that productive just because of the quantity. And now, just like you were saying with this being this containment being a clock, time is kind of going to turn to midnight pretty soon.
Yeah, the time on this has run out. Like, Chrysaor is going to break out here. There's not nearly enough troops and not enough firepower on any of these outposts to stop them all from burning to the ground. So, map control about to revert back to Chrysaor. The Chinese having plenty of economy, but not that much military, means that map control now going to go over to our purple player. These relics should get picked up and garrisoned in, and all of a sudden the HRE player looking a lot better than they were about 5 minutes ago.
And those relics are going to help offset some of the strong economic lead that that core has, but I feel like you're going to need to get all 5 relics and a couple sacred sites to put a dent in it, just because of how many extra villagers he has.
Yeah, you definitely need a lot of substantial growth in order to keep that economic count feeling somewhat even. But the good news for Chrysaor is that he's in the position to do that right now because he has map control. These crossbowmen are going to absolutely evaporate before these knights and horsemen and what I'll have you here. So map control instantly going to go over to our purple player, although I do like the relic heist before he loses map control. He sends out monks and yoinks all the relics except for 2 before he loses map control to make sure that it's as obnoxious as possible for for Chrysaor to try and get them off the map. I love it.
Oh yeah, I mean, what's the best way to deny your opponent from relics? Just put them in your own monastery. And that's exactly what core is doing. With the relic count being something so important to the HRE, and it seems like the entirety of their game has been based on getting these relics. The relic count's currently tied at 1-1 with the second one on the way to China too. So it's a lot of things that Chrysaor is doing, his military count and all that kind of stuff, but he's not getting the reward of the relics at the end of it.
This is so interesting. I'm just this counterplay between the two. It feels like they're almost in each other's heads a little bit. Just kind of, I know that you know that I'm going to do that, so I'm going to do this. And I feel like a sketch out of something from a long time ago, maybe the Andy Griffith show. I don't remember, but it's really interesting to watch from a caster's perspective because it puts us in this really unique scenario where we can see everything that's happening and we see the counterplays as they come through live, and it's just so much fun. I know I keep saying this, but I am just having a blast watching this. And as we see a ram coming in trying to push down this Barbican of the Sun for Chrysaor.
And that one ram is probably going to do it because there's no units around. Chrysaor trying to push a military advantage, being at 42-14, trying to get into Core's base. It looks like he's going to stop and back up just a little bit, even though he has the advantage. I really wish he would. I really wish he would get in there with the full amount of military that he has, because this is probably his only time where he's really going to be able to step on the gas pedal.
Yeah, this is his best window to do damage and try and bring that villager count back to something resembling an even game, because it's only going to get worse from here. This is not going to get better. And, you know, we have all the information, right? It's an incomplete piece of information for Chrysaor. He doesn't know for sure that there's only 20 military population out here for core. He might think there's more up there than there is. There's just no way for him to really know. So you can't fault him too much for playing it safe, but you do have to feel like he needs to make something happen quickly before this economic advantage spirals out of control for core.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're playing against the 2 TC Song, you just feel on a clock. Because now Core's military is starting to stabilize a little bit. He has a siege advantage now, adding a couple clock tower nest of bees. His army comp is really good against the army that Chrysaor has right now, to the point where because he has the siege, if he takes this fight, it might work out in the way of Core now.
Yeah, there's windows that are opening up for both of them, power spikes that both are trying to take advantage of, and this game is going to come down to who can take advantage of their power spike more efficiently. Right now, it's looking really good for Core because he's got this nest of bees behind a huge wall of meat in the form of all of these spearmen, which means that everything that Chrysaor has is going to evaporate. He had an opportunity to push before this nest of bees really came up and got online, but he didn't take advantage of it quite quick enough. And that means now map control, once again, swinging back in the favor of the Chinese player. Core going to be forced back, or excuse me, Chrysaor going to be forced back inside his own base.
Yeah, look at that little that you just perfectly described the juxtaposition that basically summarized this entire game. Core looking to take map control in a rather forceful way, bringing a couple villagers out and putting a keep right on the outside of the HRE hill, looking to establish a little bit of map control himself, maybe take back those sacred sites. But on the other side, we have a knight and horseman raid coming out from Chrysaor on the south side, and they might be able to take down. They do take down a nest of bees. There's a couple spearmen in the way, but he's looking for Vil kills.
That's really what he wants to get here. He's trying to bring the economic advantage back to something resembling an even game, but it's going to be really difficult because villagers can be printed so quickly out of these town centers. Now, there isn't a lot of troops here for Core to actually fight off these knights, so with their ranged armor, they can stick around and sit under these town centers for quite some time. The question is just how long you want to.
Oh, yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, some of the horsemen are going to end up going down just because of the spearmen, and it's a little bit harder of a counter. But on the other side, we have Core using his army and his nest of bees to try to take down an HRE defensive force. Horsemen are gathering around those nest of bees, and all three nest of bees are going to end up going down. The archer mass is going to end up going down. Core doesn't have an offensive initiative, and he's still dealing with raids back home.
Those nest of bees were completely undefended. A good portion of Chinese troops were up underneath the town center itself. The nest of bees had the easiest flank you've ever seen as the knights came around and just mopped them up. And on the other side, these knights have never stopped moving. So the raid still continues for Chrysaor. He's been much more active, more making sure that he uses as much micro as possible to keep these knights alive, even going to escape with a handful of them, which is an excellent way he can heal them back up, get a little bit more bang for his buck in terms of what he's getting when he pays for these knights. Now, he's still blocked inside his base, is Chrysaor. There's a keep at the bottom of the hill. So he's going to need to drop a trebuchet in order to get that in position. In fact, these knights trying to come home are most of them going to get picked off by this keep, which is pretty unfortunate. But losing that many military units for Core means he's going to lose map control as soon as this keep drops. So once again, the balance of the game shifts. You can see as each of their power spikes comes online, who's in charge and who's allowed to do what. And right now, Chrysaor is in the driver's seat.
Yeah, he is, especially now that he has a treb against this keep. It's going to keep him from being contained in his base. On the flip side, for Core, he just built a massive amount of military production, and because of the economy he has of 130 villagers, he is able to produce out of all of them. So we see an economy, even though Core, or a military, even though Core lost a lot of it, now it's 47 to 41.
Yeah, and that big military force is now going to move here and try and keep this keep alive. Pun not intended. Their primary goal is to try and make sure that the keep doesn't fall, because it gives them a foothold that they can hang on to keep Chrysaor pinned in his base. I think the keep goes down because there's no villagers here quick enough to repair it, and the treb is not going down anytime soon. But it's up to Core as to whether or not he can keep Chrysaor pinned in his base after the fact. Their military population is actually even at the time, but the army value for Chrysaor is much higher because most of his population is in horsemen and knights, not in spearmen.
And now they're going to meet those spearmen right in the middle. The problem is Chrysaor had so many land snakes in there, a lot of those spearmen end up getting absolutely destroyed because of how many there were, and that front line gets disintegrated. The back line ends up getting hit too. This is a huge win for Chrysaor.
Yeah, almost up 20 military population now. The bodies of the pink player littering the bottom floor of this valley. Now there's a defensive keep being thrown up at the top of the hill, trying to keep these knights from getting in and causing mayhem in Core's base. All of his military pop is cleaned up down to 24. It was 19 for just a moment there, but you can see how quickly the military pop climbs back up with all of these production buildings. That 132 villager economy paying dividends right now for Core. So he needs to get this keep up and continue to play defense. If these trebuchets are going to roll across the map and come into position, that's going to give Core a little bit of time to rebuild what military he has lost. But this is getting tense.
And see, the issue is for Core, he's making Zuganu, which aren't going to do anything against horsemen. He's making spearmen, which are, but those land snakes are going to torch all of those things. I just, like, where are the nest of bees at?
That's true. He built several of them. There is one. No, that's a Springald.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he doesn't have any nest of bees. That's so crazy. He had built so many before. They all got cleaned up, and he hasn't built one since. I feel like they would be invaluable right here, especially with how squishy the land snakes are.
Even just how squishy his army is in general. He doesn't have much in the way of armored units. But now he has a little, Chrysaor has a little tower here, going to make himself a little proxy base, and does have these trebs that are going to take down the keep. The only thing Core does have in terms of siege is clock tower springloads, which are going to try to take down those trebs. We'll see if they actually can before the horsemen get around and pick them off.
Yeah, there's an interesting little micro battle here trying to keep the Springolds alive while also trying to poke down the trebuchets before they take down the keep. There are a few villagers who might be in range to repair, but remember, no more repairing with wood. That was patched out a couple seasons ago, so now all repairs have to be done with stone. And what does Core hardly have any of? Stone. He's only got 190, which is enough for about 10 seconds of repair.
Yeah, and that's not going to do much. Both of them trying to establish a little bit of control over the Dale with keeps. It looks like there is also a northern keep from Core as well, trying to get some Vil kills. But while this is going on, and the fact that Core is able to have some kind of semblance over the control over the keep, his Spirit Way just got completed, and he's in the Imperial Age.
Just as you say that, we've reached the Imperial Age, and sure enough, yeah, the Imp going to be invaluable here. Going to get those tier 3 upgrades. Also going to get a lot of these big units that come online in the late game. Bombard's going to be invaluable. Elite Juganu and elite Fire Lancers also on the table as things we can really use to make things happen. But not to be outdone, using the discounted Palace of Swabia, the HRE is going to follow them up almost immediately. So both players going to be in Imp here as we enter the late game.
Yeah, and I think this is the only time that Chrysaor is going to be able to get an economic, at least, tie because of how many villagers Core has, with the Swabia being able to print them. Good move by Chrysaor, this little battle, kind of buy himself a little bit of time as he goes up to Imperial. He was able to take out the Springolds. He was able to take out a lot of the front line from the land snakes, so now we have a little bit of a ceasefire, and we created a no man's zone in the middle of these outposts and keeps, which is probably where the next battle is going to take place.
Yeah, and the defender's advantage for Core is going to start to wane as he loses out on more of these structures. It puts a clock on him to do something to move into this no man's land and stop all of his structures from falling, but if he takes too long to do that, he'll lose his military production. In the other hand, Chrysaor is okay if things stall out a little bit, because he can produce villagers and get his economy matching Core's the further on up he goes.
You know, he also needs the Imperial upgrades, right? That's going to give him a little bit of time to get those Imp upgrades, as I just saw the Elite Horsemen come in, and he'll need University upgrades as well. Core now going a little bit too high on the eco. I see him at 141 villagers and continuing to go up. He's never going to have an economy that's big enough, or a military, excuse me, big enough to take out Chrysaor. And we're going to see this now with a military count of 79 to 37. Horsemen trying to go down, keep going down just in time. Horsemen taking down Springolds. This is not looking good for Core.
No, nothing stopping those Springolds from getting taken out. The Spearmen were all pushed so forward that the Horsemen were able to wrap around and immediately counter the siege. On the backside of this, we entered the Yuan dynasty as the Imperial Palace was dropped, so a little bit of bonus movement speed for the Chinese, as well as Fire Lancers now being unlocked. Now, I don't think there are any Spearmen whatsoever for the HRE players. So Fire Lancers do have the capacity to do Oh, I guess there are a handful of spearmen. There still is a big capacity for the Fire Lancers to do work, but there has to be a window for Core to get them out here. He's down 30 military population right now, and the longer this goes on, the more of these production structures he loses. Like we talked about, the trebuchets just continue shelling away at everything pink.
Yeah, both these keeps end up going down basically as soon as you were done saying that. Core doesn't really have a lot of resources back home. He's got an 8,000 gold vein that he's got about 69 villagers on. Nice. And some of them can't even work because of how big the gold vein is. But there's really nothing defending it. It's just this army. Does come in with some of those big boom products like you described with the clock tower bombard. But he doesn't really have much in the way to protect it. I think this this fight right here is going to end up being the last. Whoever wins is going to steamroll.
Yeah, when the trigger is finally pulled, it's been a very slow burn getting us here, but when the trigger is finally pulled and these 200 pop armies clash against each other, the winner is going to probably have the run of the rest next to the game. It may take a while for things to slow down, but yeah, this is really kind of Chrysaor's kind of battle to lose at this point, I feel like, because the clock is on Core. Core's the one losing structures. He has to engage. Chrysaor can retreat if he absolutely has to, but he seems to be okay with taking this fight. He does have the military pop advantage for the time being. Lots of spearmen, going to be good against these elite horsemen, but these prelates in the back doing lots of healing, and the culverin are out as well, which completely neutralizes the clock tower bombard. It's forced to retreat. It cannot get any closer, or it will be instantly taken down by the culverin. I love to see that brought in here from Chrysaor.
Yeah, that's a super good culverin. A little bit land snakes in the back taking down all the spearmen, though. Surprisingly, there were more land snakes than I thought there were. Lancers end up going down on the front line. These horsemen up in the front being able to take down the clock tower bombard. The culverins doing a good job at that bombard as well, as that thing finally gets turned to shrapnel. And now the military count 61-9. Chrysaor with an overwhelming victory on this one.
Yeah, he absolutely ended up running amok within all of those troops from the Chinese. There wasn't enough diversity in order to keep the land snakes from going down. Would have liked to see maybe a little bit more range damage, something of that sort. So many spearmen, and the land snakes just eat those spearmen for breakfast. And like we talked about, these trebuchets, they just continue to burn. Chrysaor's happy to keep this battle going. If it extends for another 20 minutes and they both just send troops into the meat grinder, his trebuchets still continue to destroy structures from Core, and that's what he wants. So unless Core has a big enough win to push Chrysaor out of here, he's happy with this.
And this battle is so wide. I'm looking at just by on the screen, there's keeps going up on the west side. The majority of the fighting is going on the south side. But you're exactly right. These trebs have basically not been touched. Chrysaor doing a good job of using his horsemen around as kind of like a meat shield. So every keep that Core tries to make is going to end up going down. Now Chrysaor just can continue to keep forward until he reaches a bunch of landmarks, I guess, right?
Yeah. As long as Core doesn't have enough to actually force him out of this area. This is like World War I trench warfare. They just continue sliding the trench up an inch at a time, taking down one more building until there's no space left. Chrysaor's just fine with that because there's nothing that forces his trebuchets to stop firing. But he's going to run right past all of it and go for Vil kills. He's had enough. Runs right into the production line, past all of the troops, now underneath some of these barracks and archery ranges. Doesn't see any Vils there. Going to rotate over to the west where he knows there's a ton of farmland. Try and find some Vil kills. Maybe just get on top of idle all that eco. Force Core to GG now. He doesn't want to wait anymore.
Yeah, he's trying to build a little desperation keep. I'm not really sure how many villagers are going to go down before it goes up. Horsemen, rather, not that great at DPS. They're more of a good as a counter structure, so that keep does go up with enough villagers and does have 15 to garrison. So the horsemen will end up going down. It's just in terms of idling that Chrysaor did such a good job for. Core not making much in the way of units right now, and Chrysaor continuing the advantage. Which will most likely snowball until the end because his production's up front. His trebs are just going to take him down.
Yeah, and it's China. It's really tough to stop China from throwing down a keep. Even with the newest patches and changes to keeps, they just build them so dang fast. But the distraction from this army, Core has sent 30 military population or so running around his base trying to deal with this, which means Chrysaor still just moving around in the front, taking down whatever structures he feels like. Like he's like I've said it before, but it's just so true. He's happy to grind core down to dust very, very slowly because he has the map control. He has all the gold in the world that he could want. There's tons of it on Helandale. He's got the wood. Chrysaor is the one who's pinned in, and he's the one who's continually taking shells.
Yeah, and he's going to continue to take them. His villagers are also getting absolutely destroyed by land snakes. I saw about 20 villagers end up going down, but now big fight coming in the center. Battle over the trebuchets, and it looks like these trebuchets are still staying put here. I don't know if they're going to back up yet, but they're continuing to rain hell on some of these production buildings, and I think a lot of the elite land snakes from Chrysaor is going to end up cleaning a lot of this army up.
Yeah, there's enough healing here from the Scholars, and the Landsknechts do enough damage to all of these spearmen, which means that Chrysaor is going to win the land ground fight. None of the trebuchet is going to go down, and this means production falls. The curtain is called, and core GG's. Chrysaor takes game 1.
What a good game 1. You were right when you said a slow burn. It was a very slow burn, but there was a nice juxtaposition over map control on each side. All right, go ahead. Let's do our introductions. Go for it.
All right, this time, for sure, in the north side of the map, in the purple, as the English, it's Chrysaor.
And hanging out in the south, playing as the Roos, the first Roos game that I've seen so far, is Core. Now, when you play this game, because I don't know much about your game style, what civs do you like to play?
I really enjoy playing a lot of different civs. Growing up with Age of Empires, I always liked playing lots of different civs. And that's kind of carried over into adulthood. Even when I play other RTS games, people ask what I main, like StarCraft or whatever, or Warcraft or Command and Conquer. They're like, "What? Oh, are you Zerg main?" And I'm like, I just kind of play all of them because it feels like, I don't know, it feels like I'm cheating myself out of content if I only play 1/3 of the available races. Like, I don't know, it just gives me more to do. So I kind of play a little bit of everything, even in Age of Empires. So the one faction or civilization I'm not a huge fan of is the Mongols. I don't know why. I just don't really enjoy playing the Mongols. But pretty much the other 9 civs I play as equally as possible.
Well, Mongols is such a different animal compared to the other 9. So I guess I can understand why you don't. But Roos has a special place in my heart. So seeing Roos finally, one of the last games that we have, being played, I think it's fantastic. I want to see how a professional plays Roos nowadays with the new patch.
Roos in a little bit of a difficult spot, has big changes in the most recent patches, increase to town centers, increase to the amount of gold they get for different things, but a nerf to not getting gold for sheep. So they're much different than they were, or they feel a lot different than they did, 2 months ago. And that makes them really unique, interesting to check out, but it also means people are kind of like, I don't know if I want to play that right now in a tournament when there's money on the line. I'll play something that I kind of know a little bit better. So it is nice to see the Roos back. We're probably going to see the Golden Gate as an age up just because that's all we ever see is the Roos, but that's okay because it's a great landmark and it makes it really easy for you to get other town centers up and running quickly, which is going to be important against the English because they are really safe in their early eco, and then they get a free town center up at Castle Age because they almost always go for the King's Palace.
Yeah, and that second town center is really going to help them out. And it used to be in this matchup that the English would go up to Fast Castle just because to try to get a second TC against the Roos, who get one just about automatically. Now that that's not the way it works anymore, I'm curious to see if we see a little more feudal aggression. I'm curious to see if the Roos player gets the boar. And while we're looking at talking about boar, let's kind of inspect our little pork products around the map. Our one boar on the west side, another one on the east side of the hill. That east one looking mighty tasty with the deer around it as well.
Yeah, that's a great spot to drop a town center. Honestly, just there's so much food there. Drop a mill and a town center, and you'd be fed for quite some time. You got a ways to go. And there's honestly a lot of pretty much every resource. This map is really resource rich. We've got 2 huge stone outcroppings in the middle, as well as a handful of small ones out and around the outside. We've got 4 big gold veins on this map, each with 8,000 gold. So we should have gold aplenty for the long game. Of course, English don't care. They get enclosures so that they can have as much gold as they want in the late game anyway. But it don't matter for the Rus. And yeah, so this game, if it goes long, we probably won't see anyone starved out of resources because there's tons of everything on this map.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it's kind of nice that because this is King of the Hill and that middle sacred site is so important, there are some large gold veins. I see one on the north side of the hill and then one on like the southeastern side, which aren't necessarily on the top of the hill, so you're still able to get some kind of economy even though you're trying to fight up the hill.
Yeah, I think it's important when you have that. If you have these maps where they're trying to drive aggression towards the middle, it's important that you don't have the whole middle area, especially in range of like 1 keep. If you have all of these gold mines in range of 1 keep, then it's just whoever throws a keep up there first wins.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's never fun feeling that type of a map. So it's really nice to be able to have this spread of resources so that you can fight over the middle, but not necessarily feel like it's a race to get there. And as soon as you lose it, you're done. You're out of the game. So well designed.
Yeah, no, I agree. This was a pretty good map seed. Core doing something a little bit different than most Rus players do in Feudal Age, and that's going with a wooden fortress rush on top of this gold mine that's up north. And tower rushing an English player usually isn't a good idea, but in this particular case, Chrysaor doesn't see this.
Yeah, the reason people don't do it as English is because their villagers can shoot you, and so they can kill your villagers before they get the tower up. But if Chrysaor doesn't see it, like he didn't, then this is really easy for Core to be pushed off of wood. Of gold. The other reason that Rus don't generally do this is because wooden fortresses are pretty expensive, and they boost the wood economy of your lumber camps that are in the same influence. So you generally want to build them at home because they give you an eco boost, and you don't want to have to build too many of them because they're really expensive. But Core, not being afraid to build them, and not being afraid to use them to push his enemy off of both gold veins that are here, means he's got in a really cute spot where he'll be able to keep his enemy feeling uncomfortable and starve for gold.
And it also does a couple things too, because it establishes a little bit of presence on the hill. So as we matriculate towards Castle Age, English, in terms of getting up there for Castle Age, is going to have to take down these wooden fortresses before they establish any kind of presence, which could make that sacred site the Rus's as soon as Castle Age comes up.
Yeah, the English are super defensive, right? They want to huddle back in their base. They want to get enclosures. They want to let their villagers keep themselves safe with the shooting, and then they can just keep all the food in their base, all the gold, all the wood. They just want to sit up there till imp, and then kill you in it, probably. Unless they're going for some sort of, early man-at-arms rush. But that's generally how they like to feel. English like to go late. So Rus kind of plays into that by saying, all right, if you want to play defensive, I'll just pen you in, and I'll take all the resources in the middle, and then we'll play it like that. So kind of working against the natural flow of how the English like to play there, but I like it from Core.
Well, I mean, even this map is the complete opposite flow that English likes to play, right? Because they can sit and turtle as long as they want. If they wait for this sacred site to get established by Core gets some keeps up, gets some wooden fortresses around, they can turtle all they want. They lose in 10 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So really recognizing that your win condition early on here by Core and going, okay, how do I beat English? And then immediately creating a game plan that kind of plays into that. And so far, it's working masterfully. He's got a little bit of gold income trickling in, does Chrysaor, but not enough that he's going to feel great about it, and not enough to get him up to Castle anytime soon. Whereas on the other side, Core is looking pretty good. He can probably move himself up to Castle in the next minute or two if he stopped military production.
Yeah, he did go with a stable and did make a knight. As far as his food production, he's still going with sheep, no boar coming out for the Rus player, but he's going with fortified palisade walls. And usually when I play Rus on King of the Hill, I love doing this. I love putting walls up and just making your opponent fight through the middle, through all of your defensive fortifications. This is textbook play by Core.
Yeah, and it's very similar to what he did in the last game in a lot of ways. Remember, we saw him come out with the Chinese and immediately look to pen Chrysaor into his own base at the top of Hillendale. It's the exact same game plan here, only this time the English are a little bit tougher to break out of a containment than the HRE, because the HRE naturally build melee infantry, which do good DPS against buildings. English like to build ranged infantry, which don't.
And I think that's the only military units that he has right now. I could find them. It's very difficult for them to find, but 2 longbowmen near that gold mine with the 2 outposts with their stirrups ready to brace for any attack that happens to come their way. Good thing about those walls for Chrysaor is that Knight can't get in and do any kind of damage, so both of them will be going up to Castle Age relatively soon, with Chrysaor first with the King's Palace. Core going with the High Trade House, actually.
I like it because you can get a really good spot with a lot of trees in it on this map. So the High Trade House, and the other reason I like it is because it will make sure that you get all the bounty you need, right? With the High Trade House, you get an infinite supply of deer, which means you will continue to get bounty until you reach that 500 cap. That's not necessarily guaranteed on a map like this one. He probably will get pretty close, but you make sure that you'll get there with the High Trade House. So I like it.
Yeah, I'll bet you he's pretty close to the 250 mark after seeing like how many deer and how many wolves he got. If he's not there already, he's got to be pretty close. So that High Trade House is going to help him out, and probably if this game extends longer, he'll be able to get to the 500 if he so chose. But those fortified palisades on the right side not getting completed just yet. Some longbowmen being over there to snipe him. The one thing with the High Trade House and not going for the Abbey of the Trinity is once you make a monastery, those warrior monks are quite expensive.
That is true. He will have to pay more for those warrior monks. But I think the general idea behind it is that he has map control, and he knows that the English aren't going to look to change that much in the near future. So he's like, well, I have all the gold I could want. Like, there's 24,000 gold on top of this hill. I don't really need infinite gold from relics. So I would rather have a steady source of food, some nice passive gold generation that can't be raided or taken away from, and I'll build up my gold by just mining through the middle. Because he wants to take control of that space anyway.
And this High Trade House, because you talked about passive gold, this High Trade House getting 205 gold per minute. So that's a pretty solid trade house. I'd take that.
Yeah, I mean, it would take you, if you built the Abbey of the Trinity, it would take you 2-3 relics to get that much. Between 2 and 3 relics. So it's essentially 2 and 3 relics that you don't have to pick up and that can't be taken from you.
It seems like it's more of the greedier play going with High Trade House, getting that gold, and then the monastery, getting the warrior monks. So you get the High Trade House, plus for him getting map control, he has the time to build a monastery and get relics. And he's going to end up picking up, I think there's 4 that he's going to be able to get because English is so walled in.
Yeah, there's a small possibility that Chrysaor can yoink the one on the right-hand side, just outside the yellow walls here, because they were never actually completed. But yeah, definitely the one on the hill and the other 2 on either side of the yellow base are most likely going to go over to you, Core.
But instead of going for the relics, he goes for the sacred site pretty much immediately. Going to put the English on a timer, which it's going to take a while for that second TC, the King's Palace, to pay off. So putting them on a timer as soon as possible is going to help you.
Yeah, exactly. You nailed it perfectly on the head. You make the English fight now, not 20 minutes from now when their eco is really good and they're an imp. You make them fight now. They don't want to fight now. And on top of that, you also still get gold from it. That's 100 a minute gold generation that's coming in. You pick up the relic, and so you can do all of those at once. Smart to prioritize the sacred site in the middle there, recognizing that that's the win condition right now for the Rus, is to force the English to fight before they're ready. Oh, is he gonna get the yellow low? No, he killed it, bro.
I think he deleted it.
Maybe he did delete it. That early Knight actually only had 1 HP, so that almost could have gone badly for Core, but it all works out in the end, I guess.
Yeah, that's going to get healed up to full health with that Warrior Monk also. Um, it's kind of crazy that now it's about the first minute that the Sacred Site has been in Core's control, and military count's still 9-5. Like, it's so weird for me watching an English player because it seems like the complete antithesis of what an RTS actually is. You want to engage with your opponent. You want to fight them. You want to do all of these things. And as an English player, you're just like, I just kind of want to play solitaire. Leave me alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's just English is the civ for people who want to play Sim City for 30 minutes and then show up with a big army and wreck your face. That's what they do.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
I'm not hating. Like, I love playing the English, but I'm not. It's the way it is, you know.
Right.
Like, I'm not. That's not judgment. It's the truth.
I know. No, it absolutely is. The English did pick up that left-sided relic. Might be going up to get that right-sided soon, but more fortified palisades coming up for Core in the start of the hill, the English side of the hill. And now with that, English is 100% walled in now.
Yeah, and with the relic picked up, we also did see the relic get picked up over on the right-hand side, and it did not go to the English. It did end up going to the Rus. So the English will most likely be left on a singular relic, while the Rus should get 4.
And it's so much, if we're looking at gold generation, just passive gold generation, the Rus is at 800 a minute currently. They have 0 villagers on gold. They're just getting a free 800 gold a minute. That's astounding.
Yeah, I mean, between the High Trade House, the relics, and the Sacred Site, yeah, I mean, you just get all that much gold. And now, if you choose to mine extra gold to continue to support your military population, you can. Or you can just take all your villagers and put them on the other resources. And what that does is it offsets the balance that the English player has by having the extra town center. Because there is no second town center for our Rus player. He's playing all of this on 1 TC. So theoretically, he should be at an economic disadvantage, but he's not, because he has so much passive gold coming in that is pretty much even for the time being. And that Sacred Site timer continues to tick away. We're down to 7 minutes now.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right with the passive gold, pretty much just adding villagers to the economic count. What's nice is the Rus player has map control, so for some of the things that he could get, because I know for Rus, usually at this point of the game, you get bottlenecked on food just because your sheep are gone, you can't really farm transition yet, you've been using your wood for a lot of things, so he's going to get some berries. It looks like he's going to get some stone to put down a second keep. There's another one on the hill, but he's able to get boar if he wanted to. He's able to get some of these outside hunts if he wanted to. So as far as a bottleneck, I don't think we're going to see it for the Rus in the next 6 minutes, which could spell pretty much a victory from Core if he's able to keep up military production.
Yeah. And the English player, Chrysaor, now recognizing that he needs some sort of presence up here on the top of the hill. He can't wait until there's 30 seconds left to send an army up here. Going to drop a keep at the bottom of the hill and start torching down these walls, sending some troops up to the top. But Court has seen this already. He has foreseen everything. And he drops the walls in front of the Sacred Site already, which forces these longbowmen to rotate around into the fire of the keep and this wooden fortress. Really not where they want to be. So then he's going to have to pull in spearmen to torch these walls down. It's all going to get more and more expensive as time goes on.
Yeah, and it's just these little bit of walls. I thought he was going to wall the entirety of the Sacred Site, but these are perfect just to make all of those units go around and take a charge of that keep. And that could take an extra 5 seconds of walking time, which could spell the just because of how close Sacred Site victories can get on this map, that 5 seconds could be all you need. But now that this keep goes up from English, from Chrysaor, he's going to be able to get the network of citadels, upgrade, which he does almost immediately to get that increased attack speed. Going to have some trebs behind it. Core doing the right thing, making springles to try to get those trebs down, because if these defenses go down, the Sacred Site goes down.
Yeah, and that's what Chrysaor has recognized this position, much like the last game, where he can sit back with his trebuchets and continue to burn down these buildings from afar and force Core to play into him. And he wants that to work out for him the same way it did in the last game, where he can just grind Core down very slowly over 10 minutes until Core doesn't have anything left. The difference here is, though, that on top of this hill, there's already production and defensive positioning for Core, which means that if he chooses to counter engage into Chrysaor, it's going to be a lot more difficult to keep his siege alive.
And I think if he keeps progressing these trebs up, you're going to watch your words come into fruition, because these Springolds, there's only one here right now, but the Springold's going to be able to take pot shots at this treb. It's going to have to back off.
Yeah, and that's what, like, the English are going to live and die by their trebs in this situation. As soon as the treb can't keep firing, he's done. Doesn't matter how many foot soldiers he has. The treb isn't hitting anything, so he has to turn around. As soon as the treb starts firing again, we're back on board. So as long as they can keep the treb from firing too consistently, they can stay up here all day, which is what made the previous push in the China game so much more effective than this one. Nobody touched the trebs in the last game, so the push never stopped or stalled. But as long as Core is able to keep those kind of in check, he should be in a much better place this game.
Yeah, and based on how those walls are structured, he's going to be able to take shots at those trebs. I think he needs a gate in order to do that. But the way these walls are structured and the trebs' own range to try to take down some of these keeps, they're always going to be in range of those Springolds to stop this push from happening. So I think Chrysaor needs to continue to keep upward. Instead of just having that one keep in the back, he needs to creep his defensive structures up here.
Yeah, he's making plenty of other resources. I'd like to see him move some some villagers over to stone, and like you said, drop a keep at the top of the map here. It feels like that opportunity maybe should have happened a few minutes ago and is kind of already come and passed at this point, because we only have 2 minutes and 30 seconds left until Sacred Victory is complete. And now comes the time when everybody just puts all the troops that they have on top of the sacred site. Now, in this moment, that actually favors Chrysaor, because he has 175 pop compared to Core's 123. So he's got more bodies to throw at the sacred site if he really needs to.
But even just looking at army value, a lot of the military that Chrysaor has is composed of spearmen, which is going to help against those knights for sure. But Core has a good archer mass behind it. A little bit of men-at-arms coming in, but here we go. Our first actual battle on top of the hill. The knights coming in right in front of the spearmen. There's Mangonel in the back, which is going to help, and the Springolds doing a little Springold war at the same time, having a little front war. English Springolds have to back off, and it looks like based on these defensive structures, English has to back off, so it's a successful defense from Core.
I was just thinking, as we saw the knights and the spearmen collide in the lineup there, I was like, a Mangonel would be awesome here, and then I saw the boulders come in, and I was like, perfect, Core's one step ahead of me.
That's exactly right. And now that the Springold war, the English Springolds actually come out almost on top. It looks like one Springold is left with 3 health, scurrying away. But they did take down one treb, which is going to cut the time it takes to cut these keeps down in half because of how many trebs he had. Now with 1 minute left, he needs a lot more trebs. He needs a lot more units, and he doesn't have the time to wait for it.
No, so when they had 3 trebs up here, there was enough DPS to out damage the healing that these villagers were doing on the keep. With only 1 treb, the villagers are actually repairing it faster than it gets damaged. So this is what I was talking about. The treb push gets stalled because they don't have enough to burn down this keep. So what does English do? They immediately back up. With only 35 seconds left, they can't do that anymore. They have to go. You have to go now.
And I think Chrysaor heard you, because he's sending all of his spearmen. And it looks like spearman's the only thing he has up here. Archers are going to pick him apart. Longbowmen in the back aren't going to be that helpful.
Oh my goodness, those Mangonel shots!
That all it took was 1 shot, and all of those spearmen end up going down. Oh my god. Core is just standing all of his villagers on top. He knows as long as he has 1 unit in the sacred site, it does not matter. And as this tick comes down, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
GG. Core recognizing his victory condition, knowing the mechanics of the sacred site, not allowing it to drop even a fraction of a second means that as long as he holds those guys on top of the sacred site, he wins. And the English player just took too long to get a foothold on top of the hill, which is what we were afraid of when we saw them get penned in at the very beginning of the game. Core had a game plan, he executed it, and it worked. Simple as that.
And that's like, I don't know, like, to me, I don't even need to see stats of this game. It's just like Core played the map, Chrysaor didn't. And that's
Yeah.
what happened.
No, you hit it perfectly. That's exactly what it is.
So now we are jumping into game 3. Remember, this is a 1-1 tie. Core lost previously against the HRE to his Chinese. So we're diving into one more. I'm going to change the camera before we go into the game, so nothing is spoiled for you guys.
So you have to leave your group because we can't watch a replay at the same time.
Oh yeah, that's right. I don't know why I invited you, but
That's okay.
I appreciate that you're a good friend and you accept the invites when I invite you, even though they're meaningless. That means a lot,
yeah,
and I appreciate it.
Yeah. We stick together. Men support each other.
That's right. All right, last game, and it looks like it will be on Lipany here. Remember this last game, this is game 3. This decides who gets 3rd place. And we're going to wait for this game to load just a little bit. And I'll put it in the caster mode, and I will give you guys the game instead of my, I'll say handsome face. I'll give myself the credit. Okay. All right, so I am stopped at 5 seconds.
Okay, I'm at 8, so you can go forward just a little.
You're skipping ahead of me over here. Okay.
I know, I'm sorry. Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay. I'll do the introduction this time. So spawning in the southwest of our map, which is Lipany, playing as the purple, it is Roos. And who do we have in the northeast, voiceless one?
Playing as the Chinese in the color yellow, we have Core. Coming off a win on King of the Hill. It is a 1-1 now. The winner of this one will take 3rd place and a nice little prize pool home to his family or his dog or whatever he has. I don't know. Core family?
He has a hookah. If you've seen him stream before. So looking at this matchup now, we saw a little bit of Roos last game up against English. Now that we're on Lipany and up against Chinese, how much do you know about this matchup in terms of who's favored, stuff like how the game kind of matriculates?
I mean, I know a decent chunk. The Chinese, same as they always do, are going to want to eco. They don't like to fight until they've got a nice, healthy eco behind them. The Roos are going to be putting on the pressure. They're going to kind of dictate the aggression and the pace of the game. They can go multiple TCs and try and keep up with the Chinese. You're welcome to do that. But I think it's more likely that the Roos goes into aggression. I think that's just the safer play, the more realistic play. I don't think anybody is going to realistically look at the bonus that Song Dynasty provides and be like, yeah, I can keep up with that.
Yeah. Can you imagine you see that second town center go down? You're like, yeah, that seems like no problem.
Yeah.
But so you kind of nailed it, actually. So with Roos going into Feudal Age, I feel like this matchup hasn't really changed for the Roos. Chrysaor did a good job on Bounty, able to get about 200 so he can get the wheelbarrow, which is good for him. But also when they get to Feudal Age, they get the Golden Gate, they get a boar, and usually for the amount of archers that the Roos can make because of the boar, because of their wood economy, usually it has to be enough archer ranges to overwhelm the Chinese. And you're able to do that in Feudal Age, but you have a small window to do that. And it takes a lot of finesse in order to do it correctly, because you said it right. When it's Castle Age time, the China's just going to destroy you.
The other option you have as the Roos is they get access to early knights, same as the French. They're not as good as the French knights, but they have them. So you can go into early knights in the Feudal Age and try and use that to force the Chinese off of Zhuganu, which is what they really want to be doing. They don't want to make spearmen. They can, but they really want to make Zhuganu. So you can use knights as a counter to that and then build your own archers to kind of counter their spearmen, and that hopefully will play out for you. It ends up being a micro battle, but if you do that before the Chinese player really gets comfortable and gets their eco under their feet, that's probably where the Roos is going to be most comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, with this one, just play Roos like it's the French. Just make knights and archers and go for it.
Yeah, no, unironically, but seriously, yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly the way I feel like the Rus wants to play this.
I think with all of the success that I've had as a Rus player against China has always been feudal aggression. I've tried fast castle. I've tried to do these things kind of disrupt Chinese a little bit later, and it seems like when you try to do that at the 8 or 9 minute mark, you're just too late.
Yeah, you really want to get up into their grill before they're able to construct defenses, get those walls up, get into the Song Dynasty. Like, if you don't throw them off, and this is for most top level Chinese players, right? We're not talking about like, your quick match games if you're in silver or whatever, but like for top level Chinese players, if you don't throw them off their game in the first 5-6 minutes, they're probably where they want to be already.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. If you don't disrupt them, they're just going to end up being better than you. And no disruption yet. A little bit early in the game, about 4 minutes 30 seconds. Chrysaor, however, going for the boar, and we see some of our boar. That is some pulled pork, ladies and gentlemen. They are pulling that boar right over to the middle. Got the scout micro on it, able to take down that boar. So he will get the 75 bounty. Might be looking for some aggression in the meantime, but going to put a nice little hunting cabin and a wooden fortress down.
Very nice. Going to mean that they do not have to drop anything else additionally to keep themselves safe here. This hunting cabin not going to get any passive gold generation, but it will be a great source of drop-off for this boar. And 8 villagers, the perfect amount to take a boar and also have enough to garrison inside the wooden fortress because it supports 8. So there's that nice little synergy there between the Rus. You can tell it's very well designed the way that they want to be out on the map, taking food all over the place, but also have an outpost that's big enough for everybody.
It's true. It's an all-inclusive outpost. I didn't really think about it like that. I do want to comment on how well the wooden fortress is placed, actually, because I see a lot of people in lower elo games maybe put it a little bit to the right, put it a little bit to the left, that kind of stuff. You want to put it right in between your source and the opposing town center, essentially, which is what he did with the wooden fortress, because a lot of people, especially Chinese, they'll go ahead and throw a barbecue in your face. If they see you get a boar, then they can swipe the boar for themselves. So you having good wooden fortress placement means that you can stabilize and get that wood source and translate that into whatever you want it to be, whether military production or going into Castle Age. For Chrysaor, it's Feudal Age, Knights, already has a stable out, and he's raring to go.
Yeah, I think first instinct, as a newer or less, experienced RTS player is like, well, I want to put the defensive structure in the back because then I can run back to it when I get attacked. Mm-hmm. But you're right. You want to place your defensive structures in front of where your vills are going to be so that they can't drop a tower, within range of your vills, but not in range of your tower. You prevent the counter tower drop that way. Just a little tip for everybody at home who might be watching.
Yeah, and especially if you're playing against English, right? Because you have the longbowmen, they'll be able to pick you off. Some of those wooden fortress placements could make or break your game. But first early Knight moving to the northeast. Looks like he's going to try to go through this little alleyway where Core is building some walls. And he's going to get those walls up just in time so that Knight has to go the long way, looking to take down some villagers. And I don't see, for Core, it doesn't look like he's doing much in the way of... Nope, just kidding. Second town center. I missed it.
Yeah, he's got the second town center down. And so now the 2TC Song Dynasty. This is where the Chinese want to be. This puts kind of not a damper, but like a squeeze onto the Rus. They're now forced into kind of one of two paths. Either they play this to the late game, right, until the eco advantage is equal, and it doesn't matter anymore, or they do damage before the Chinese get so much eco they're out of control. Those are the two options you have at this point, because you can no longer stop them from getting to the second town center. There's a small window, I suppose, where you can kill the second town center and then you kind of play things out in the mid game, but they've placed Core placed the second town center so safely, perfectly on top of the first one, that I don't see a real world where you can kill one town center but not the other. So more than likely, the two options for the Rus player at this point are fight in late game or hit them before this eco gets too big.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is put up or shut up time, where you got to make a decision. And it looks like Chrysaor is going for the latter because he is producing Knights out of 2 different stables currently, and Core is responding by making some spearmen of his own that he is actually supervising. So he's popping out spearmen every 6 seconds. For knights, it takes about half a minute. So favor for the spearmen in that case.
Yeah, they're going to do just fine as long as the spearmen aren't pulled wildly out of position and a night raid goes into the wood line or something. They should be just fine. These berry vills are underneath the barbican. They'll be fine. The gold isn't really being taken all that much. There's a couple vills on gold. You might place a couple spearmen out there in the long term, but everything just feels so safe. The Sim City base building for Core is on point right now. Nothing is vulnerable. Nothing is out of place. It's all perfect.
Yeah, even down to the town center placement, I agree with you. Because you're right, if China gets a little bit greedy with this second town center placement, it's as easy as dead. And for the Song Dynasty, having villagers at such an increased volume, you're going to have more than 10 around that town center. And then that ends up a lot of villagers being dead because they have nowhere to go.
We saw that in a previous game. It was one of the ones between Salami and BCQ. I don't remember the civs they were on, but somebody dropped a second town center, right? But it was so greedily placed and so far away from the rest of the base that it got rammed down, and then the game spiraled out of control there because so much time and resources were spent into getting this second TC up, and they didn't even get any bonus from it. So placing it safely does mean you're not going to get as much map control from it, but it also prevents exactly what happened in that previous game from happening to you.
Right. And I think that was the Ottoman mirror, I think, wasn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was a good callback to one of the past series. And Chrysaor's trying to get some kind of raids going. A lot of spearmen on the other side, going to be able to stop these knights from doing anything. And even though he took down a couple villagers, he had about 3 villager kills. China already has 30 villagers more than you.
Yeah. So this window I'm talking about where you hit them before their eco is out of control is closing fast.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of time left for you to do something about this before they're going to be able to outstrip you in terms of production. You can already see between the supervising on that barracks, getting spearmen out so fast, and just the amount of resources that Core has on board already, he's starting to stretch away in terms of the amount of everything he's gathering. He's got 800 food per minute compared to Chrysaor's 150 food per minute. That just tells you all you need to know about how bad the eco is right now.
Yeah, and it's such an issue for Chrysaor too, because as soon as you pointed out his food per minute, his boar ran out a little bit ago. So he had to migrate all of his boar villagers all the way down south where some of those deer patches were. So that took a lot of time for him. So he stalled a little bit on the night production, whereas Core, he can just keep making spearmen all day because Chrysaor's not making archers either.
Yeah. So we needed to see an archer transition just a little bit earlier because it's obvious that Core is building nothing but spearmen, right? You've seen that for a couple minutes now. As soon as you see that there is no archery range, there is no stable, there is nothing but a barracks here, you got to drop an archery range of your own to counter these spearmen with archers of your own. You can't just go pure knights.
Yeah, it's kind of astounding to me that he hasn't already, because these knights need to be protected. They're so expensive. And they keep getting hit by these pot shots by spearmen, these hand cannoneer shots, while only taking down maybe like 1 or 2 villagers. The total throughout all of this raiding, which has been about 6 minutes worth of raiding, is about 9 villagers, and which is not going to create a dent in a 2 CT Song China.
And it's important to remember that these are not French knights. These are Rus knights, which means they don't heal automatically. You have to make it up to the Castle Age and build a warrior monk in order for these guys to get healing. So damage is permanent on these guys. So these little pot shots they take as they run by the town center, they matter just a little bit. And if you take too many of them, you end up like this knight in the middle here with only 14 HP. He's pretty much useless. If he stops at all to do anything to a villager, he's dead.
Yep, you're exactly right. And these spearmen, because they stop so much to get one of these villager raids and they do get one killed, the spearmen are able to catch up just a little bit. This is taxing in terms of APM. And Chrysaor is not making any more units now. So his aggression, he seems to have ceased in terms of aggression, and he's thinking about Castle Age now. The issue is Core's going to be up to Castle Age essentially with him, but with 30 extra villagers.
Yeah, so the Castle Age, you always have to, ask yourself, what will the advance up to Castle Age get me that they don't have? right? It needs to serve you in some way. And I just don't know what going up to. I mean, Castle Age is still the best time because if you're floating that many resources, you might as well spend them in some way, right? You don't want to just leave them there. But you're right. I don't see a way that Castle Age is going to benefit Chrysaor where that he's like, ah, yes, now I'm in Castle Age, and he doesn't have what? He's also in Castle Age. He's also got Siege. He's got better Siege because it's Astronomical Clock Tower Siege, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So you have everything he has, but he's got an eco advantage on you.
Right, you should be doing it as more of a proactive, aggressive move rather than you're just trying to catch up.
Yes, exactly.
I do want to comment on, again, how broken China is, because the Rus did kill 18 villagers. That's a lot of villagers. And the course still has a 26 villager lead after that. It's bonkers to me.
Yeah, it's China's a little good. They might be just a little bit good. We don't yeah. That's all I have to say about that.
That's solid analysis. I appreciate it.
China's good civ. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. Yep, and now they are going to start getting into their own form of knights, being lancers, and it looks like the Rus are going to pop out some Muscovite crossbowmen to try to stop anything. I'm thinking Chrysaor was thinking Core was going to go into Palace Guard, something like that. The crossbowmen are going to do good against the lancers too, but you're going to need a big mass of them in order to one-shot.
Somebody in chat wants to remind you they have redeemed push-ups. They want you to do push-ups. I offered to do them in your place. They said no.
Oh no, for Neri, no. I gotta do them. Sorry. Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing me and him have. I like to think he's my friend, but then he just bullies me into doing push-ups. So.
Isn't that what friends do?
I don't know. I don't know. I've never had any one of my friends do that. Maybe we just have a special bond, you know. But I will get to his push-ups. But as we're matriculating into Castle Age, I'm hearing relics getting picked up by some warrior monks on this side, and now we're seeing Chrysaor translate into the first option that you gave him, was go all the way to late game where this villager lead doesn't matter.
And this is, so he's kind of falling back to his game plan. This is kind of the third time in this series we've seen him go for this, the contain idea, right? He builds a wall on the other side of your wall. He doesn't let you leave your base. He picks up all the relics. He takes the sacred sites. He gets you to late game, and then he'll try and grind you down from there when the villager lead doesn't matter quite so much. And you know, all these relics and these sacred sites, they will eat into that villager deficit quite a bit. So this is the correct move for him to make at this point, and it's up to Core to respond correctly to break himself out of this contain and keep all of the relics and all the sacred sites out of Chrysaor's hands. He has to respond because Chrysaor is making the aggressive tempo-defining move at this point.
Well, and the problem is, even though the Rus is trying to get these relics with the Abbey of the Trinity, it looks like the second one is going to be on the way. He has a more immediate danger, and that's raiding parties of Lancers. We have a raiding party of Spearmen, it looks like just Spearmen on either side of this Russian base here, with villagers that he cannot afford to lose right now, being down as many as he is.
Yeah. And the Lancers are going to survive a decent amount of time because they have their +1 range armor upgrade. So they can sit underneath these town centers and these wooden fortresses for really as long as they want to. 230 health means they've got all kinds of time to sit down here and idle eco and raid villagers. You got 18 idle eco out of your 58 total. That means you got 40 villagers working right now against your opponent's 107. Like that's that's the math. All you need to know about how this is going is right there.
And watching this game, as I'm watching Core's Lancers just kind of rain havoc over this base, it makes me solidify the fact that every time I play this matchup, I'm feudal rushing them. Like letting this happen is just non-negotiable. You can't let this happen.
No, it's just like I said, you have to respond in one of those two ways because you have no other options. The only other option you have is to go up to a second town center yourself and try and simultaneously kill one of their town centers or do enough damage to their villagers that the Song Dynasty bonus is kind of offset, and that's doable, but it is probably by far the hardest option of the 3 to pull off.
I would say so. Yeah, that is quite challenging. Especially because back home, as Core is getting all of this rating, all of this villager idle time, all of these villager kills, notice how much APM it spent Chrysaor to go around and get those 18, 19 villagers. Core just got 20 just by running Lancers into his base. And then he just hit Imperial, and it looks like the game got called immediately after that.
Was that what happened? It crashed out of the game. Was that the game ending?
Yeah.
That's weird. I didn't get the game complete and the game ending screen. I just went right back to the main menu.
Yeah, in a rather anticlimactic fashion, Chrysaor just got out of that game as soon as Core hit Imperial, and Core took the 2-1 victory, taking bronze in our MetaPlays Monthly number 3.
We want to thank our MetaPlays website subscribers. Your contribution helps us keep the project sustainable. As we reach higher subscription goals, you are helping us cover more and more behind-the-scenes costs, such as video editing. Check out our subscription page using the link in the description, and remember to collect your perks. We will see you the next time.